so that we can make sure to provide this out to all of the folks that weren't able to make it onto one of these calls today. We had a session earlier. So this is the second session for instructors to use Discover. So a little bit about Follett Discover before we get into the demo. Discover is an application that you can use to not only submit adoptions, but also you can use it to search for new materials to use for your course. We have a wide variety of publisher content as well as supplies and then open educational resource content available through Discover for you to adopt for your classes. It does provide a personalized experience. Because you access Follett Discover through Blackboard, you will be single signed on to Discover. So that means you don't need a username and password to get into Discover. You can just automatically launch it from within Blackboard. So with that, let me go ahead and start sharing my screen. So everybody should see my screen at this point. So when I come into Follett Discover, this is the screen I land on. So this is called our My Courses screen within Follett Discover. So you can see here that this shows the personalized experience. So I logged in and I'm seeing spring 2020 as the current term. And I am able to see that I'm teaching a biology class, a history class, and a math class. And when I talk about Follett Discover, I always talk about the fact that it is very much a choose your own adventure type application. So you do have the ability to use our global search mechanism to search by keyword, author, 13-digit ISBN to return a more targeted result set. Or you can also use that Discover functionality, which is available through each individual, what we call a course card. So you can see here that in this math course card, a subject can be entered to then trigger that Discover for this course button to be activated. And then it will search based upon the subject that I enter. So going through, the great thing about Discover is that regardless of how you submit your adoption, we will show what those adopted materials are through Discover. So you can see here that with this history course, adoptions have already been entered. They may have been entered through Discover. They may have been entered via a paper form, an email, but regardless of how we get those adoptions to the campus store, we will present those adopted materials in Discover for you to view and review. On this page as well, you have the ability to quickly acknowledge if you are not using materials for a course by simply clicking this I have no materials to adopt for this course link. That will immediately send a notification to our course materials management system at the store that you are not using anything for the class, and we will mark that as the status for that course section. Also, hot off the presses, we now have a link available to acknowledge that you are using open educational resource content. So while we have OER content being aggregated through Discover for adoption, if you would rather just acknowledge the fact that you're using OER content and move on with your day because the finer details of those materials are being provided directly to your students in a different manner, then you can simply click that link to acknowledge that you're using OER content. And much like that, no materials being used for a course, that notification will go to the campus store for them to mark as the status for that course and section. So to get started through that adoption process, I'm going to go ahead and show you the Discover path. So we're going to use our biology course. So because I've already previously selected a subject, I can go immediately to clicking on Discover for this course. And it takes me to my results page where if I scroll down, I can see that now I'm presented with results based upon the subject that I previously selected, which is biology. So I have the ability to sort these. It default sorts them by what we call relevance. Within those search results, I can do a finer return set and search these specific results by keyword or title or ISBN to see whether it comes back with a finer result set. I can also filter these results by clicking that filter button and either updating my discipline and subject, or I can also sort down to, say, I just want to find titles that are available through Follett's rental library. I can select that box, and then it would return that result set as well. So looking at the results that are returned, I can see that there are a few different bits of information that's available within the return results. So I can see the basic information, so the ISBN, the title, the author of the material, but then I can also see whether it is part of that rental library that Follett has. I can also see that it's available through our digital content platform called Brightwave. So any sort of material that is also provided in a digital fashion has that Brightwave, what we call a badge. And then also you see here that there's a few titles that show as pre-approved. And what that means is that depending upon the adoption process within your department, what we call a department administrator, so it could be the department head or department chair, they may have chosen to give their stamp of approval to titles, and so they can mark them as pre-approved. And what that means is, depending upon the adoption process that's in place, if they've marked a title as pre-approved, now you can go in there, adopt that title, and it immediately goes to the bookstore for approval and processing because the department chair has already given that stamp of approval. For titles that aren't marked as pre-approved, they can still be adopted without a problem, but that department chair or department administrator would need to give that final approval before it goes on to the campus store. So it's really dependent upon what the process is that you have within your own departments as to whether you would use that feature or not. So if we go into the details of a course material, you can see here that the detail page provides a deeper dive into more details around the content. So you can see now there's a description about the title. I can also view table of contents for the material. I can see pricing, both if purchase pricing as well as rental pricing. And this is the store specific pricing. So you're seeing what a student would be paying if they were to go to the store today and choose to purchase or rent that material. Coming down the page, this is also where I would enter my adoption. I can also add this book to my Follett Discover library, which we'll get to in a little bit. And then you can also see we start to suggest other materials that are items from the publisher, as well as what other instructors adopted in addition to this material. So you can scroll through those and you can start to select down into those materials. And that's really where the Discover piece comes into play when we're talking about Follett Discover. So you can really start to go down a rabbit hole as you're looking at more and more materials. And if I scroll down to the bottom of the page, I can also leave behind a rating or review for the materials that I teach with. This is super helpful if there's an instructor who's looking for new content. The ratings and reviews might help them decide whether this is something that they want to teach with or whether they want to look for something else. And so any sort of rating and review you submit is viewable across all of our network of Discover stores. So we have over 500 store locations and campuses using Follett Discover. So anyone across those 500 stores would be able to see your rating or review about the material. So let's go ahead, and I'm going to go ahead and adopt this book. So once I do that, it gives me this confirmation that the title was adopted for the class. And when I scroll down, I can see here's the title that I just adopted. And you can see that there's a status of pending. If I hover my cursor over that status, you can see that there's a little bit more information available. So it's pending campus store review, which means that adoption information has now been sent to the campus store, and they're going to be in the process of reviewing it and then finalizing it for the course. Once that has been done on the campus side, you'll see the status change from pending to adopted, and it'll actually change colors as well, so it'll look green. And so if I were to go back to my courses page, we'll be able to see an example of what that looks like when it's been adopted. So you can see here in my history class, you can see that this piece of Merlot content is in adopted, so it's this green color and it says adopted. But looking at this Merlot content, it brings me to something else that I wanted to call out about open educational resource content. So I briefly touched upon it that we aggregate multiple OER providers through Discover. So the way that we have our search results broken out is by traditional publisher content. We also have supplies, so things like goggles and aprons and knife kits, as well as many other supplies that can be searched and adopted. And then we have our Open Educational Resource Content tab, or OER tab, and that provides all results related to that subject of biology. If I wanted to search by a specific provider, I can use that filter option again, and from the provider dropdown, I can choose to select, say, OpenStax. And if I want to search just for biology materials from OpenStax, I'll go ahead and type that in as my keyword. And now I can see the OpenStax content available that covers biology. And say this is my first time using an OpenStax piece of content. I can go ahead and click Details, View Details, and I'm taken to that course material detail page again. And for our OER content that we have piping through Discover, after the description for the material, you'll see that there's this Access Material link. When I click on that, it will take me immediately to that OER content. So now I can start to see whether it's something that I would like to use for my class instead of, say, a traditional textbook or a supplementary material in addition to the textbook. So now I can review that before I adopt it. But say this is something that I'm totally on board with and I want to adopt it, I can go ahead and select that Adopt button. And now I can see that as a piece of adopted content for the course. The reason why this immediately shows as adopted is because since it's free content, it doesn't have to go to the bookstore to be vetted or entered into course tracks. It's readily available for your students to access, so we don't have to go through that sourcing process. So I can easily click Access to go back to that content, or if I were a student coming into the class, I would see a similar experience. I'd see this book and it would have a purchase button underneath it once it's been adopted. And then for my OpenStax book, I would see an access button, much like that instructor does, and be able to click it and go through that same experience that I just showed during the adoption process. If there's other content that you wish to adopt for your class that is in the realm of OER, you can use our Add My Content feature. That feature, when I click on the Add button, allows me to link out to other content that might be available on the internet that I want to reference or use during my class. So I can do that through this URL field. Or if I have something like a PowerPoint or a syllabus that I want to upload for students to access through Discover, I can choose to upload that through here and then create a title and description for it. And then I can choose to make it visible to anyone using Discover to potentially find and adopt, or if I want to keep it limited to my students, I can do that as well by selecting that option. And then I attest to the terms and conditions to use it. And then once everything's been selected, then that Add button will activate. And then I would adopt it. So going back to our adopted course materials page, The other thing is too, is that even though we have 10 million plus titles available through Discover, we know that there's always at least one title missing, because it could be custom content that's created for a class or something that's hot off the presses. And so we do have the ability for you to add a title into Discover when you can't find it. So if you've searched by ISBN, title, author, and nothing's doing, and you need to get it added, you can use this add title feature. And what it will do is it'll ask you to fill out the required information. And then much like that add my content, it would activate this add button. And that gets added to your class and goes to the campus store for processing. So going back to our My Courses page, we talked about how to enter adoptions. Let's talk a little bit now about the My Library feature. So the My Library feature is another way that instructors can enter adoptions. This is especially helpful if you're going to be reusing materials from one term to another. So when I go into my library, I can see all the materials that I've either A, added to my library manually, or I can also see materials that I've previously used for past terms that are visible within Follett Discover. And so I can search my library. These are organized alphabetical by author. Or what we also have available is the flexibility to add shelves within our library. So my library has one shelf. It's a biology shelf. And if I want to add materials to that, say I wanted to add this microbiology book, I would click this add to shelf link, and I should see, oh, it's the joys of a demo site. I should see my biology shelf along with this option to add a shelf. And then I would be able to add that to a shelf. But since my demo site is being difficult, as demo sites do, I'm going to go ahead and add a new shelf called microbiology. So I'm going to go ahead and save that. And now you can see that here's my microbiology shelf, and it has that title that I just selected to add to a shelf. And so say I wanted to view just my biology titles. Now you can see here, oh, it's probably because it was already hanging on the shelf. You can see here that it has the other title that I just added to that new shelf. So you can see that the same material can be on multiple shelves, as well as other materials that I've added to the shelf. We have a share option that what you can do is say that there's a new instructor that's just starting on your campus, and they'd really like to understand what materials are being used currently, to see if they want to go with one of those titles or whether they want to stick with what they're already familiar with. You can use the share functionality to select the titles from with whatever shelf you're currently viewing. You can select those titles and send those in an email to whomever's asking. So, you know, if it's Professor Smith, you would put in Professor Smith email through here and then click send to recipients. Similarly, on the My Courses page, once you've entered your adoptions, if you wanted to let your department chair know that, hey, I've entered my adoptions in, here's my proof. What you can do is click the share option on our My Courses screen, and it's a similar thing. So you would select the courses that you'd want to share with that person, type in their email, and then go ahead and type in the email and click send to recipients. And they would receive an email with a PDF attachment that shows the courses that you've sent along with the adopted materials. If there isn't anything that's going to be used for the class, it would also say that on the report. Or if you haven't entered any adoptions for a course, say I've sent all of these, and because I haven't adopted anything for my math course yet, it would simply say no materials have been adopted yet for this course. So that person knows that, hey, I'm still working on this, and I'm in the process of getting those adoptions entered. We also have an integration with our partner Xanadu. And if you're not familiar with Xanadu, they are a provider of course packs and copyright clearance services. And so if you are looking to put together a more curated course materials experience that's customized and specific to your course that you're teaching, you can click on this Create button, and it will take you over to Xanadu's website, where you can start putting together a course pack of materials that are, it could be your own materials, it could be articles that you've used in the past, it could also be articles that are available through Xanadu's course pack creation site. And you can pull all of those pieces together to then create that consolidated course materials experience. So this is the initial page that you land on, so you can get started by, they call them projects, by creating a project, and go through that process of pulling everything together. The great thing about this tool is that you can see all of the different components that you're adding into the course pack, and then you can rearrange them in whatever order that you'd wish to deliver them in. And then at the very end of the experience, they give you a price of how much that's going to cost depending upon the format you want it delivered in. So if you want it delivered in print but black and white, it would be one price. If you want it in color, it would be another price. If you want it spiral bound or perfect bound, or even if you want it delivered digitally, all of those price breakouts would be available for you to choose from. So the last stop on our tour of Follett Discover is going to be our message center. So our message center is available in the upper right-hand corner, and that allows you to go ahead and correspond directly with the bookstore, all while staying within that Follett Discover experience. So if I go into the message center, I can create a message to the campus store simply by clicking the button. It pops up this email form. I can add attachments. I can insert images, and then go ahead and send that. And that will go over to the campus store to have them review. And the great thing about the message center is, I'm going to go ahead and cancel this. But the great thing about the message center is that to view a response to a message you send, you don't have to be in Discover. So I can click this settings button, and I can put in whatever email I want to have message center replies sent to. So it will default to your EDU email address, but say you have a Gmail account that you might check more frequently, you can update it to that. And then you would see those responses coming through your Gmail account, and then you can respond from your Gmail account too. It's not like it's a view only where then you have to come back in the message center and respond that way. You can do it all through your email. And what's great is all of that correspondence back and forth will still be retained within the message center. So if you are in Discover, you can quickly come back and check on it. You can look at the communication history to make sure that any sort of communication's been resolved. So that really ends our tour of Follett Discover. So I wanted to take time now to open it up to questions, to see what questions that you had. You can certainly enter them through the chat. If you want to ask them verbally, just make sure that you select to unmute yourself before you start talking. I know I always have a bad habit of starting to talk before I unmute, thinking I am unmuted. So I'm going to go ahead and open it up now to see what questions that you have. Question came in, if our courseware just needs students to buy a code can they buy online? We do want them to buy through the campus store, so we would encourage them to purchase through the campus bookstore's website. But the adoption of that material should still come through Discover, so that we have a record of that adoption. Is there an online campus store URL? Krista or Cole, I don't know if you have that handy to provide and put into the chat.
Yeah, I'll post it in the chat.
Perfect, thank you. Oh, Krista beat you. Thank you, Krista. What is the address of the website that we can log in? So the great thing about Discover is that you don't need to go to a website to log in with a username and password. You can access Follett Discover through Blackboard. So once you've logged into Blackboard, you should see a link for Follett Discover that you can then select and immediately be launched into the application. So you don't need to worry about logging in anywhere. It looks like there might be some problems downloading the PDF. I will work with Krista and Cole to make sure that they have that available for distribution. I know sometimes Teams gets tricksy with attachments. Any other questions out there? Where in our Jaguar is the link to Follett?
I believe I saw the instructions are after you log into Jaguar, you can go to My Institution, and then there's a tools page, and on that tools page there should be a Follett Discover.
Perfect, thanks, Cole. What other questions do you have?
Hey, Karen, this is Bill.
Yeah.
I wrote this in the chat, but the link to the campus store works, but I got a security warning that I had to get past before I could get to the website. So either you or Krista might want to check that with our IT department and make sure there isn't some kind of an issue with getting to the website.
Sure thing. Thank you. The next question is, yes, we can send out step-by-step instructions. Cole, let me know if you need them. I think I provided them to you, but I can't remember if it was this location or a different location.
We actually sent them out
Okay.
to the entire faculty, and we can send them out again. The PDFs, the step-by-step guides for the faculty and the concierge access. We sent those out.
Okay, perfect. And it looks like Cole just copied and pasted into the chat the directions again as well. All right, and the next question, if there's not a Brightwave symbol under the book listing, does that mean that the ebook version is not available? That's correct. So for anything that we have available in an ebook format, you'll see that little Brightwave icon as part of that course material card. And then let's see, what is this website for? So the TAMUSA campusstore.com, that is for the actual e-commerce website where students would go to purchase their course materials. So they can go directly to the campus store website to purchase their content. They can also do that through their Follett Discover experience as well, that they can access through Blackboard as well. The next question was, do we have to request textbooks via this website every semester? So I'm going to let Cole and Krista answer that one.
Yes, this will be going forward the way that the bookstore will be asking for adoption requests. Of course, if you do have any questions or need assistance with the site, please let me or Krista know and we can help out. Or even altogether, if you need a one-on-one session for how to use the site, we can help with that as well. But this will be the way that the bookstore begins to gather adoptions starting this spring semester.
Thanks, Cole.
Hi, Cole.
Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Hi, Carl. Thank you. This is Lee from kinesiology. The reason why I asked this one because we used to request the ebook through our departments, and then our department secretary usually send out the ebook request every single semester automatically, unless we want to change ebook from A to B, because you sounds like we have to request the same ebook for the same class for every single semester. Am I correct?
You are correct. And actually, tomorrow is training for staff and department admins. So you can still follow that method if you prefer. You can give your ebook information to your department admin, and they can just let us know that you're using the same book again, and we'll take care of it for you.
Thank you, Carl.
Great. The next question came in. It says, once we do the course adoptions, will the books, specifically ebooks, show up on Blackboard the same way they were before Jaguar Day 1? I'm gonna need some help answering.
Karen, I think I can help a little bit with this, even though I didn't really participate in this program myself. I think this is a reference to the old ebook program, by which the ebooks would be embedded in the Blackboard course shell.
Okay.
And I think she's asking, and she can definitely unmute and correct me if I'm mischaracterizing her question. I think she's asking if that would be the case if you were to order an ebook through the Follett Discover shell, which you're ordering through Blackboard anyway, would the ebook be embedded in Blackboard? I think that's the question.
Sure. So the ebook itself won't automatically embed into your course shell in Blackboard. So the student would still be accessing it. They have a couple different ways that they can access their ebook. They can either access it through Follett Discover, or they can also access it directly through our Red Shelf integration that I believe might be present within your Blackboard instance. So that would be the other way that they can access it directly within Blackboard. And then the student also does have the flexibility to go directly to the Red Shelf website to then access their content as well. So there is a few different ways that they can access it, but if it was immediately kind of loading into the course previous to Jaguar Day 1, then that experience wouldn't be happening. It would still be the experience that you had probably during your fall term. Oh, great. So therefore, the Red Shelf link in Blackboard currently will be the access point in the course. Exactly. Yes. All right. Any other questions? These are all fantastic. All right. Well, if there aren't any other questions, I don't want to keep you. I know that it's getting late in the day. So thank you very much for coming to today's session. It's my understanding that Discover will be opening up tomorrow for spring term adoptions. So you should be able to start going in beginning tomorrow to enter those spring adoptions into Discover. So, and then I will work with Krista and Cole to provide this link recording out to anybody who wants to go back to refer to it. There's also plenty of other resources within Discover. There's a training video that's linked out. There's a tutorial that's available. We have FAQs, so we're chock full of stuff. So thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you, Karen.
Thank you.